So this is what the Russian-Ukrainian battlefield is like. This is a true reflection of the shortage of manpower. Let's not talk about anything else, just this. Watch the battle. The proportion of elderly soldiers on the field reveals the extent of the manpower shortage on both sides. Especially in the RMAO area, veterans over 60 years old went to the battlefield much earlier. It's no longer a rarity. The matter is settled. Take for example, this old soldier, MAO, who's carrying artillery shells. Just by looking at his grey beard, you could tell he was definitely over 60 years old. Even veterans of his age. War. It is also difficult to carry out frontline combat missions in the field. They will be arranged to go to some relatively safe places, responsible for moving supplies or other relatively easy work. Similar to him is this veteran who loves collecting scraps. Before going to the battlefield, he liked to collect scraps to supplement his family's income. Now that he's on the battlefield, this good habit has naturally been preserved, along with various discarded ammunition and weapon remnants. He quickly collected a large number of skeletons in order to prepare for the battlefield. The shortage of recruits is not only due to the expanding age range of male conscription, but also, many female soldiers also appeared on the battlefield, and some even had to withdraw due to injuries or disabilities. Demobilized soldiers returned to the battlefield, many of whom relied on prosthetics to move. We don't know anything about this kind of soldier. Whether he would be a burden to his teammates on the battlefield goes without saying. Some people with canes, elderly soldiers and various other elderly, weak, sick, and disabled soldiers appeared on the battlefield. This further reflects just how severe the shortage of manpower truly is. Furthermore, in order to solve the problem of manpower shortage, the conscription office staff would go directly to the streets to arrest people, especially those who met the requirements. Young people with certain conditions, whether you like it or not, are subject to him. They caught it, but in the end, they were only sent away. Last battle. The fate of the field. The forced labor of men transported to Ukraine has been a recurring phenomenon, but recent videos prove that. The conscription office is facing increasingly fierce resistance, and the media has also discovered a danger. In most instances of resistance, onlookers participated together. The above explains the public. I've already reached my limit. The first paragraph is the most. The initial video footage was taken in a residential area in Ukraine. Several conscription officers accompanied by police. They forcibly dragged a man with a leg disability into the car. He said he was compliant. The conditions for conscription must be met immediately. Reporting from the front lines, they witnessed disabled people being arrested and used as cannon fodder in broad daylight, with passers-by nearby. It exploded on the spot. In just a few dozen seconds, dozens of people surrounded the recruitment vehicle, completely blocking it. They shouted in unison to release the people. Some people blocked the front of the car and others stretched out. The car door was surrounded by 3 layers of people, making it impossible to pass through. The conscription officer initially used the excuse of performing official duties too. They said anyone who dared to stop them was breaking the law and they would be taken away. But they didn't even say that. This only fueled the crowd's anger, and it looked like it was about to escalate into a large-scale conflict. The conscription officers and police officers together numbered less than 10 people. It was impossible to quell the anger that filled the streets, and in the end, Abel let go and watch helplessly as the body is crippled. The disabled person was picked up by the public and drove away in a sorry state, not daring to utter another harsh word. The second video is even better. This illustrates the seriousness of the problem. A young man was stopped on the street by a conscription officer who was about to take him away. "Let's go, young man." He struggled desperately and cried for help. The passers-by, who were no relatives or friends of his, saw the situation and didn't say a word. He rushed over to help. Someone grabbed the recruiting officer's arm tightly, refusing to let go. Someone immediately grabbed their cane and the recruiting officer was slapped, and someone even pulled out pepper spray and sprayed it in the officer's face. The scene completely spiraled out of control. The conscription officer was beaten and had to cover his head to hide. Flash, let alone catching someone, couldn't even escape himself. After much effort, they failed to catch the person and ended up getting themselves injured and covered in dirt before leaving the scene. Akin. Videos of this have been popping up everywhere on Ukrainian social media lately, including ones taken at supermarket entrances. The forced conscription was met with a standoff from the entire audience of customers. There have been instances of arresting people at train stations, which have been met with collective protests from passengers. There were even conscription officers. The people who came to arrest someone were driven out by the entire community of residents wielding farm tools. The scale of the resistance grew larger and larger from the very beginning. What started as an individual's escape escalated into a collective act of resistance from bystanders. The methods have become increasingly radical, starting with verbal protests. It turned into a physical blockade and even armed confrontation. The conscription work was about to stall. The Ukrainian government's focus is not on reflecting on whether its policies are appropriate or not. The correct approach would be to assign more personnel to the conscription officers to maintain order. According to the latest regulations, the number of people in conscription teams deployed to the streets in many areas has been directly increased. A standard 5-person team is required, plus security personnel accompanying them. It's practically like giving them money. Everyone. They were equipped with bulletproof helmets and batons. Multiple media outlets have noted an extremely dangerous detail: almost all the resistance scenes. Not just one party involved, a person fighting alone. Instead, a large number of ordinary people who were watching voluntarily stepped forward to help. These people and those who were arrested were not related at all. Strangers. Yet they were willing to risk punishment and being drafted into the military to intervene, which shows that the public had long been fed up with this practice of forcibly conscripting men. Discontent is no longer just the sentiment of a few individuals, it has become a societal phenomenon. A consensus is just one spark away. A full-scale outbreak in Russia and Ukraine. There was a pair of soldiers in the Ukrainian army camp on the battlefield. They're always so carefree and irresponsible. Even those covered in tattoos, though not carrying the latest equipment, were. They were assigned to the front lines whenever there was a battle. They are the pardoned soldiers from prison. Since the outbreak of the Russia-Ukraine war 2 years ago, both sides have gradually fought back. A war of attrition can result in heavy casualties. Compared to Russia, Wujun's side is clearly in a more precarious situation, while the West. Mercenaries from various countries are simply a drop in the ocean compared to the needs of the front lines. A car's worth of firewood. Even domestic competitors are finding it increasingly difficult to achieve their performance targets. Therefore, they naturally wouldn't leave these young men in prison idle. This is how this army came to be, which explains the differences in their military appearance. I have to say this place. The person in the face. They're all talented and have great speaking skills. Some of them are in prison for robbery and fighting. Some of them had blood on their hands. In short, they looked incredibly fierce. Many. Before going to prison, some of them were thugs and some were workers, and now they all share one common profession: soldier. Among them, the reason why both the elderly and the young were forcibly conscripted into the army was not without conditions, namely, in order to reduce or waive punishment. Death row inmates strive to obtain a lighter or reduced sentence by escaping the death penalty. Offense is, in order to reduce or avoid punishment, they could even receive a certain amount of wages. However, the Ukrainian army was not. Who? People will be conscripted into the military, but those convicted of rapism or homosexuality will not be. Enlistment requires knowing that these people are in prison. In prison, they are the most despised and the most bullied. Even when placed outside, it is still difficult. Some were bullied when they integrated into the team. A convict with a large criminal record, once armed, is vulnerable to further bullying. Negative consequences can easily lead to tragedy. Therefore, they must try their best to eliminate unstable factors, and it involves breaking up suspects from different prisons and regrouping them into different units. However, a group of prisoners like this, it is also difficult for the troops to integrate into other regular troops, so it is established independently. And those in charge of managing them are they are the elite of each unit. They all before going to the battlefield. A unified training schedule will be implemented. Because of the mixed environment of prisons, most of those who go in are not good people. So there are also some that are not. Coaches usually have a headache when training troublesome students, but not dare to be too strict. After all, these people in hand, of course, these soldiers all had weapons and knew that this was their chance to gain their freedom. Although the price to pay for this freedom might be their lives, it is for them. They've all been to prison once, what's there to be afraid of? Therefore, they trained with a fierce determination. They were very hard-working, but also because of the nature of their military units. They didn't get any good equipment. Most of them were still using inferior gear. Some of the AK produced in the last century even. I was assigned to a second-hand bulletproof vest. The bullet marks were clearly visible, and he was assigned to the front lines during the war. As for whether the prisoner would be enlisted, he later became a deserter, or surrendering to the Russian army is probably a relatively rare occurrence. After all, there was a sudden attack behind us. The strike team was flying in the sky again. Besides, the war has progressed to this point, and our own homeland has been destroyed like this, no matter what. He said he should also do his part. Like the convulsions before death, the elephant is probably. The odds were against them, but Ethan and Sarah remained remarkably calm in the corridor. Sarah, who is 33 years old this year, has already joined the army. Long before November 2022, she was a model and fitness instructor. After the outbreak of war, due to the shortage of medical personnel, having some nursing knowledge, he volunteered to join the army and became a combat medic. When he was first assigned to this medical station, he was both physically and mentally exhausted. I'm not used to it. Fortunately, my comrades in arms who worked with me. He's a nice person. He even specially set aside a room for him to live in. They even thoughtfully vomited all over the walls of his room, making them look like his favorite colors. Even the pink flowers in his room were changed frequently. At the same time, comrades would also teach them some battlefield survival skills, life experience and shooting skills. Recommended bulletproof vests and bulletproof heads that offer good protection, are lightweight and suitable for women. Helmets, etc. are essential in case of fierce fighting on the front lines and a large number of wounded. They also had to brave the gunfire to go and provide support, just like female soldiers like Sarah, who have professional medical knowledge, are generally not sent to the front lines. Most of them go to other medical facilities, providing guidance and training or directly participating in the treatment. Just after Sarah went out, soon another one was delivered from outside. 2 soldiers. It was learned that this woman had a very large belly. The very fat soldier was. The shrapnel from the shell hit, but it was because he was fat and had a thicker layer of body fat that the kinetic energy of the shrapnel could tear through his bulletproof vest. Only a minor wound remained on his back. He was not seriously injured. Chen's internal organ injury only required debridement, simple bandaging, and intravenous fluid administration. Otherwise, it would be fine. The problem was that they were unable to treat another seriously wounded soldier. They could only be transported to hospitals further back. Alexei, who had just treated the soldier's wounds, was also providing treatment. He was a professional doctor. Before the war, he was just a junior assistant in a dental clinic. Now also, he began trying to treat the seriously wounded soldiers, so in order to alleviate the immense. The psychological pressure also included raising 2 small dogs. Cats come to keep me company. In fact, everyone at this medical station. The pressure has nowhere to go, so much so that I don't even dare to drink a drop of alcohol while eating. Because of him. They knew the wounded could be brought in at any moment, so they couldn't. The day after getting drunk, the cyclist, who had sustained minor injuries, was already. There are no problems. After registering the information, I have to return to the front line. Even though his face was full of resistance and reluctance, he had to go back. In fact, soldiers with minor injuries like him who receive timely treatment are considered. It is very lucky, because many soldiers are unable to reach their destination even after being shot. When to evacuate from the battlefield, for example, this person who was shot in the back. The veteran endured 3 days of fighting before finally getting a chance to withdraw. At this point, the bullet inside his body had already traveled a considerable distance under his skin. The doctors could only use magnetic resonance imaging (MRI) to treat it. Iron was used to locate the bullet before it was removed by cutting. After the bullet is removed, a visual inspection is required. Check the integrity of the projectile to prevent the copper jacket from remaining. In fact, medics usually advise soldiers to carry it with them at all times. Bring one.